Racism in first world country is structuralized. Minority and immigrant in United States have to constantly afraid from ICE and criminalization of the police. Meanwhile, first generation immigrant parents have no power, money, and unable to communicate in English, while they also have to have the responsibility to protect our children. That's why as government side of the house, we will raise our children as first generation parents from ethnic minorities. We would raise our children within ethnic enclave, which is a proximity of area that have strong identity within our origin of our country before necessarily assimilate them with the rest of the country at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. What do we want under our side? We want to give our children the sense of protection and identity, which is topic that I'm going to talk about within my speech. So moving on to my speech. First thing first, I'm going to talk about why raising your children in ethnic enclave sometimes is the only way to get a sustained sense of protection, and secondly, why raising children in ethnic enclave will build a stronger sense of identity. First thing first, why it's the only way to give them the sense of protection. Let's talk about the context in here, ladies and gentlemen. We think that country that is predominantly white, like the United States and United Kingdom, have history of racism, not just because of slave trading, but because there is laws written by the Constitution that purposely marginalize certain communities. For example, in 1950, there is a U.S. law that prohibits African American to live in U.S. suburbs, or segregation that blatantly shows to you that African American isn't equal with white American. Who is the most vulnerable actor in here? The most vulnerable actor in here is first generation immigrant that usually has no power or unable to educate in the language of in English, for example, ladies and gentlemen. But let's analyze why they come to the United States to begin with. We think that there are two predominantly main reasons. First, usually they come from conflict of territories because there is wars in their origin of their country. But secondly, they might also come to the US for searching a better life, for searching the American dream, ladies and gentlemen. But there's also the reality when this immigrant come to the United States, usually they are still going to be marginalized even worse when they arrive in the United States. That's especially in first generation immigrant parents, because we also have the responsibility to protect our children, ladies and gentlemen, which is something that both sides should be prioritized. We think that sense of protection didn't always exist in all United States, especially in Republican states where there are still racism culture is very much glorified in states like Texas, Minnesota, and so on and so forth, ladies and gentlemen. That's why sense of protection didn't come equal in United States, for example, ladies and gentlemen, or other predominantly white countries. This is why ethnic enclave exists to begin with. Ethnic enclave exists because those people from the communities has the sense of solidarity, that they are suffering together. They are trying to protect each other back because the similarity that they have, because they're coming from the same culture, because they're coming from the same country, ladies and gentlemen. This is why the protection only could exist in ethnic enclave. Why? Because in ethnic enclave, you are not going to be seen as stranger, ladies and gentlemen. You're going to be seen as brother and family. We didn't have to be scared that we're going to be blatantly shot by the cop in the street, ladies and gentlemen, because there's brothers that will going to be protect us at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. This sense of solidarity is very important for us as parents, because we want to protect our children first, ladies and gentlemen. Children from first immigrant parents usually have unable to educate in English and very much vulnerable living in United States, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the sense of protection could only exist if there are people that actually constantly support you, that didn't see you as stranger but as brother and family. This is only exists in ethnic enclave because there's a strong sense of solidarity and responsibility to protect each other backs, ladies and gentlemen. But opposition might come up with this debate and talking about how making ethnic enclave will going to get marginalized even more in United States, for example. Here's the thing: we have to understand that both sides will going to be face certain degree of racism. The comparative is in their side of the house, they will have to fight in their own if they didn't live in ethnic enclave, ladies and gentlemen. In our side, because we live together, because we are in bigger larger group, we will going to have a stronger sense of solidarity and we're going to be faced the racism that happening in the United States together, ladies and gentlemen. But secondly, we think that it is harder to do marginalizing things or to do racism if you are in ethnic enclave community, because there's constantly other people that watch you. That's why the racism will not going to be as bad in our side of the house, because we are in larger group rather than in their side of the house, ladies and gentlemen. They will going to be protected in our side even better at the end of the day. But opposition also might say that especially if we limit our children with an only ethnic enclave, it will going to make them harder to assimilate. With this, which is leading to my second argument, why raising children in ethnic enclave will going to build a stronger sense of identity. We think that immigrant children are very much prone to lose their origin of identity, ladies and gentlemen. When you live in predominantly white culture, the only thing that will be shown in television, in media, is white culture, ladies and gentlemen. There is lack of representation in media, lack of representation of your culture in TV, ladies and gentlemen. But let's talk about why identity to begin with is very important. Within that identity is something that defines them, especially from immigrant children. This identity is very much important because it's carrying certain culture that is important to uphold for themselves, ladies and gentlemen. What is important is two reasons. First, for the diversity of the country within itself, and secondly, to have the sense of originality. Within that, immigrant children usually have high chance to lose their sense of identity, ladies and gentlemen. Usually, they have to compromise their culture to adapt with white countries, ladies and gentlemen. This is very problematic because either way, whether or not they will going to be adapt or not, they will going to be still discriminated and discriminated anyway, ladies and gentlemen. For example, Muslim immigrants that come to the United States or predominantly white countries have to compromise because they are unable to find time to pray, for example, or they didn't have they didn't have mosque within US states, for example, ladies and gentlemen. This is why, by raising our children in ethnic enclave, at the very least, we give them this chance, we give them this opportunity to build their identity, especially from children that didn't develop their identity to begin with, ladies and gentlemen. In outside of the house, our identity as immigrants still protected even better because we did not have to compromise anything, ladies and gentlemen. But secondly, let's talk about assimilation, ladies and gentlemen, which is opposition might say that we're going to make them harder to assimilate with the rest of the country. No, ladies and gentlemen, within that, at the end of the day, we still live in the United States, we still live in the United Kingdom. We think that even if we protect our children within our ethnic enclave, those people who will going to still learn English, ladies and gentlemen, those people will going to still learning about the culture of American, the concept of American, and so on and so forth. They will going to be assimilated even better in our side because at least we give them sense of protection first. In their side of the house, when you just put your children to assimilate without any protection, you will going to have been prone more to discrimination and marginalized at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And this is something that we don't want as parents, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm already explained to you why raising our children is very much important for sense of protection and for identity. That's what we proud to propose.
The opposite side of the house coming to this debate, talking about the disconnection that will happen between our children and the country in the very first place. And they also talk about how this kind of motion is a regression toward the progress that we are having right now, talking that this is just simply getting back to what we know as segregation at the early 1900s and the early states of America, maybe in other countries. But my first speaker already explained to you that the risk and the safety issues is still very dangerous for our children, especially we as a first-gen immigrant parents, because we just come into this country, we don't know how this country works, and the society, will they accept our culture, will they accept our religion, this kind of country in the first place. And because of that, my first speaker already explained to you clearly on how this will help about the safety to the children. But what I will bring this debate is a new point of view where this kind of motion will actually help the ethnic minority community to thrive, to get a better society, and to get better political power, and also better economic power in this kind of country in the first place. Right? The problem that we are facing right now, for example, like education, there's so much discrimination and racism in the education system by the children, even by the children. Can carry a bullying to this kind of ethnic minority through their culture or religion. And this shown by one cases that I know, like the prominent footballer Raheem Sterling for Manchester City is getting racism by a 12 years old, and the audacity to do that, meaning that the racism is clearly inside our community, even at the early stage of life. These first-gen immigrants, our children, probably needs more help for them to actually fit into a new country, to a new society, to understand how this country works and how the society works. But this racism itself will not help them as a whole to actually reach some kind of goal and some kind of better education in the very first place. Now, The second thing that we have the problem is the workplace, because as an immigrant and as an ethnic minority, we face many discrimination. And my first speaker already explained to you how this kind of discrimination happen. Now, how will this kind of community and this kind of enclave actually help not only the children but also the community? Coming to my first argument on how this will help, there will be a few layers. Firstly is the education side. In this kind of enclave, we have better safety and a better education system for our children. Because what? Now the children doesn't have to face racism and doesn't have to face the discrimination that is happening in public school in outside of the enclave. And of course, they will have a lot more friends because they have more friends from the same culture, from the same religion, or from the same language group that they are having right now. So it is easier for them to fit in and actually learn more things in order to understand this nation, to understand this new nation that we're living right now. And the second thing that we will bring more better is the workplace, because when we're living in an enclave, of course, people inside the community has a sense of belonging, which is the sense of belonging itself creates a protection, and also the feeling that we want to protect our brethren, our community. And of course, this will our children will face less discrimination that they will be having outside of the enclave, maybe unequal pay, or maybe they are rejected their work because of their race or because of their religion. And this is what we will solve. Firstly, what is better in our side of the house is when we have better when we have better protection from racism, our community will thrive, because local business will flourish more. Because logically, if we live in a society that hates us, then our businesses will not thrive, because people won't buy it, or even discriminate it, or even attack the store, because that things sometimes happen when the racism is so prevalent in this kind of society. When we have this protection, our local business can thrive, and our own people are helping this local business to actually flourish more. They are buying our local businesses, they are using this kind of services given by our own community. Meaning that when we live in this kind of enclave, the local business will flourish more, and our children will get a better chance to get work in this kind of enclave. The second thing that we will bring is, because of better education that we already explained before, our children will have a better chance to have higher wages and a better work than we do, because they need it more, and we need to give them to them. Because when you have better education, more job is open to you, and you are given more opportunity to get a higher position and a higher wage in the very first place. That will help them to create a better community and a better economical power as a whole. And the third thing that is most important is to help with political power and law. When we live as a separate community, as an ethnic minority, our vote will not count because it is too small. When we move in as one enclave, then our vote will actually matter. We will actually get representation in the parliament and the government in the very first place. Only in this way we will able to get this kind of help from the government, and also get the law to actually protect us and give us what we need. For example, maybe if you're Muslim living in America, you don't have break time for Salat Jumat, and you don't have holiday for Ramadan or Idul Fitri. And this is what we can get from political power, but only if we live together and get this kind of protection. And living inside this protection is what we need the most. If the opposite side of the house keep talking about the disconnected, of course there will be interaction with the majority. We still interact with them, and even our children can work outside when they're old enough, when they know how the society works. We still learn about the country to integrate the curriculum, the language, the history. We will not be appalled with the language anymore as the second generation and the third generation. Even if we can take the bullet, even if we are that disconnected, it is still better. Because what? Disconnected is better than death. Because the racism outside there is, the potential is so big. Not only you are able to be killed, and also you can be put to jail without no particular reason, and you can be stopped and frisked by the police in the work from home, work from your work or from your school for no reason at all. And this kind of potential risk can get you to death, or even get you to jail sentences and prison time. And we believe this kind of prison time will actually hamper the children's future, because when you have that, you cannot integrate with the society right now. This is why we believe that our side is better, and the future is better for our children than what the opposition give us threat in this kind of motion. Thank you very much.